WWE draft is just around the corner, and with it comes a bunch of expected changes, a whole bunch of unanswered questions, and more than anything, a tremendous amount of crappy fantasy booking from WWE fans online. So I'm going to be tossing my hat into the ring of crappy fantasy booking, because with the draft, we can expect WWE superstars and even champions to change brands. You can expect new storylines, new feuds, and NXT call-ups getting their chance to shine on the main roster. But this year's draft is a little bit different because NXT is one of the brands that's eligible to be drafting. Now, we don't know the full rule set of the draft, but we can only assume that NXT is able to draft members from the main roster to come over to Tuesday nights on NXT. And with NXT getting a new TV deal, it stands to reason that the WWE wants to bolster the roster of NXT with main roster members. So today we're going to look at 11 realistic options to go from Raw or SmackDown over to NXT. Now, in the past, going down to NXT was seen as a demotion of sorts. But nowadays, we're seeing superstars revitalize their entire careers in NXT like Baron Corbin did. And we're seeing WWE megastars go down there to do a 2 or 3 month run like Becky Lynch did in 2023. So the notion of getting sent down to NXT has a completely different meaning in 2024. Hey, as always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, ring the bell for notifications. If you're a wrestling fan, I know you're gonna fall in love with this YouTube channel because we always upload daily wrestling content. All right, let's jump to it. First and foremost, we're gonna start with a couple of obvious ones. These are guys that have already gone down to NXT and are even challenging already for the NXT tag titles, that being the Authors of Pain, Akam and Razar. I think that their affiliation right now with the Final Testament and Carri and Cross hasn't quite gone over with the wider audience of the WWE main roster, so I think that this is a great move for their careers right now. On top of that, not only do I think it's a great move to help continue to develop the Authors of Pain, but I also think that they're really needed right now in the NXT tag division, a division that is very weak at the moment, a division that just lost one of its most popular tag teams in recent memory in the Wolf Dogs and Baron Corbin and Braun Breaker. Meanwhile, when I look at the tag team division of Raw and SmackDown, without the Authors of Pain right now, that division on the main roster is absolutely stacked. So they could really benefit from getting more screen time on NXT while also helping bolster the very depleted NXT tag team division. Also, don't forget that the Authors of Pain at one point were one of the best tag teams on the planet, just cooking up 5-star match after 5-star match down in NXT Black and Gold. In my opinion, Authors of Pain are one of the greatest NXT tag team champions in the history of the Black and Gold or White and Gold brand. So it's kind of a bit of a perfect storm to go down to NXT, go have some banger matches, get a ton of in-ring work, get a ton of television time, help bolster the tag team division. I think it's just a perfect storm that will allow the Authors of Pain to truly flourish again on NXT. I think they would benefit from it. I think that NXT and the tag team division would benefit from it, and I see no reason why not to make this move. I will say, if you're going to fully bring down the Authors of Pain, make sure that it's with Paul Ellering. None of these guys really have that charisma on the microphone to be able to really get this team over as a character. You need Paul Ellering. Paul Ellering is the guy. Paul Ellering is the emotion and the personality behind the Authors of Pain. And we've already seen in the past how terrible the Authors of Pain are in terms of TV presentation when they're stripped away of Paul Ellering and given other managers like Drake Maverick. So if you're gonna make the move and have them go over to NXT, make the move correctly and bring them all as a package. We'll continue to keep things obvious. I mean, if you want to bring over the Authors of Pain, you can bring over the leader of the Final Testament and keep the group together, that being Carri and Cross. And of course, if Carri and Cross is gonna be there, y'all better bring Scarlett along with you. Listen, on the main roster, they have tried and tried and tried with Carri and Cross. A lot of people think that they haven't done enough with Carri and Cross to try and get him over on the main roster, but just look at some of the people that he's already had feuds with. This man has been feuding with WWE main eventers and WWE Hall of Famers. He's been feuding with Shinsuke Nakamura, with Rey Mysterio, with Bobby Lashley, with Drew McIntyre, and we still all feel like they haven't done enough with Carri and Cross, when in my opinion, when you look at the resume of the guys that he's had feuds with, they've tried, and they've tried pretty well. So maybe it is time to give Carri and Cross a change of scenery and maybe allow him to fully rebuild himself in NXT to be this monster that he was originally touted as when he came into the main roster a couple of years ago. On top of that, this would be a nice return home for Carri and Cross, who did dominate down in NXT, but he did it during the pandemic era. Carri and Cross was one of the last bastions of NXT Black and Gold, but he never got a chance to experience that that black and gold crowd. Right from the onset, Carri and Cross debuted in August 2020, something like that, when there were no fans at all in attendance on NXT. Well, there were like 50 people behind protective glasses, but really that doesn't count, especially when you look at the crowds that NXT is pulling these days with shows like Stand and Deliver. So it would be nice for Carri and Cross to go have a dominant run in NXT, do it again just like he did back in 2021 and 2022, but this time do it with an actual crowd there. Because even though on the main roster, Carri and Cross might be in the mid-card, upper mid-card, if you bring him down to NXT for a little while, he's an instant main eventer over there that could have great matches and great feuds with the likes of Ilya Dragunov, Trick Williams, Carmelo Hayes, you name it. Honestly, the list right now is endless of possibility of great matchups that Carri and Cross could have down there. And then once he's been fully fledged out and fully rebuilt under the Shawn Michaels model, he can come back on the main roster and be that dominant monster that Triple H has been wanting him to be ever since re-signing with the WWE. But frankly, we're in a situation where the current position that he's in on the main roster just isn't as good as it probably should be, so you aren't really disrupting too much by sending him to NXT so that he can become that monster that we want him to be. We already kind of talked about how weak the NXT tag team division is, and if it's a weak division, then we might as well continue to bolster it with a great tag team in terms of talent, bring them down to NXT where they can actually shine and get TV time and in-ring time, unlike how they're currently being portrayed on television, which is not being portrayed at all. That being Ashante the Adonis and Cedric Alexander, who a couple of months ago came together. They did this set of vignettes where Ashante the Adonis was Cedric Alexander's, I don't know, fashionista, fashion guru. But here's the thing, here's the fact of the matter. They are both great in-ring workers, especially Cedric Alexander. Cedric Alexander is a guy that is universally known as one of the most underutilized, underappreciated talents in the WWE. And when I look at the main roster, there's still no spot to truly and genuinely allow Cedric Alexander and Ashante the Adonis to truly flourish. The way that I see it as an outside fan looking in, I just don't know where they're gonna get their opportunities on Friday Night SmackDown or on Monday Night Raw. It's not gonna be as a tag team either, because as I've already mentioned, the tag team division on both sides is already ridiculously stacked. But the NXT tag team division, on the other hand, right now is going through a rebuild phase. So if you want to bring in some performers that are veterans that can help anchor the tag team division, I don't think that you need to look too much further than Ashante the Adonis and Cedric Alexander. I think they could absolutely cook down in NXT. And maybe this even opens up the possibility to give them enough screen time in NXT as a tag team, and eventually telling the storyline of their breakup so that they can get called up to the main roster, freshly repackaged as single superstars. I just feel like if you're not gonna use them on the main roster in any capacity aside from maybe dark matches on Friday Night SmackDown, you might as well get the most out of them over on NXT. Because right now, if you don't count the Authors of Pain over on NXT, there's maybe 2-3 really credible tag teams. So let's bolster that division and let's continue to go back in time and make that NXT tag team division great again like it was back in the heyday of Black and Gold.
Look at that guy.
Oh yeah, cause tonight will be the night. Oh my God.
Up here.
Oh, that is beautiful.
God.
Did you like that? Because that was a sneak preview on Patreon's new show, The Wrestling is Cool Match Club, which is available exclusively to patrons over on patreon.com/SantiZap. Over there, you're gonna get The Wrestling is Cool Match Club, where Sancho and I react to matches that the patrons suggest. This week, you're getting the WLC match, AJ Styles versus Kurt Angle back in the TNA days, and Eddie Guerrero versus Edge from 2002. On top of that, you get the Wrestling is Cool podcast 3 days earlier than everyone else, the Raw reviews, the SmackDown review, so we're adding more and more value to the Patreon basically every week. That's going to be patreon.com/SantiZap. You'll find the link right at the top of the description or in the pinned comment. Hopefully you come check it out. There's almost 1,000 people over on the Patreon, and this community continues to grow. So hopefully you come check it out. Now back to the video. The next person that I have on here is Natalya, who would be incredibly valuable at this moment in her career over on NXT. We're actually already seeing her appear on NXT on regular television, being a mentor to Carmen Petrovic and feuding with Lola Vice. Shit, she has an NXT Underground match, which is like an MMA style shoot match against Lola Vice in an upcoming episode of NXT. So she's already doing the heavy lifting to be part of the NXT roster. But the reason why I think she's incredibly valuable for NXT is that WWE is touting this next generation, and I feel like Natalya is the perfect person to really help usher in that next generation and mentor them and make them be ready for the main roster. I know a lot of you don't like Natalya, but it doesn't change the fact that she is a legend of this business. She is somebody that's been around for a tremendous amount of time and has a lot to be able to teach these 20-something-year-olds down in NXT. Frankly, I feel like if she does retire from the WWE in the upcoming years, that she should be an authority figure or a mentorship figure, either on screen or in the background of NXT. And let's face it, on the main roster right now, the women's division on both Raw and SmackDown just has too many names that, in my opinion, are all above Natalya when it comes to the pecking order of the women's division. So in my opinion, as a performer, she would be best utilized in NXT, especially with NXT expanding their women's division and including a mid-card women's championship. She could be right in the mix. I don't think that she should win it, but she could be in the mix to help elevate the importance of that title and help elevate the importance and prestige of the people that are going after that title. I think that she would be a great asset in NXT. All right, look, I didn't have time to Photoshop this, but I have Alpha Academy, but I need you to X out Chad Gable because Chatty Daddy is staying on the main roster, baby. It is possible that in this upcoming draft, NXT loses one of its major stables in Chase University, who are a stable within NXT that also have a comedic undertone to them. And that kind of represents the Alpha Academy at the moment when you look at Otis, Akira Tozawa, as well as Maxine Dupree. I want to reiterate, we're keeping Chad Gable on the main roster. Do not touch Chatty Daddy. I want him to go team up with the Creed brothers, become heels, and break everyone's ankles, okay? Otis would be a great veteran presence down in NXT, same with Tozawa, and it would also give an excuse to give Maxine more in-ring time as she continues to develop as an in-ring performer. I do believe that the WWE sees a bright future for somebody like Maxine Dupree. She's still young, and she has developed very well under the tutelage of Master Gable, but now I think that she's going to be able to develop even more if she gets more in-ring time over in NXT. And like I've already been alluding, the team of Otis and Tozawa can again help bolster that weak tag team division on NXT. And again, these are recognizable names. NXT is going to be moving to a new network in the CW, so having names that people recognize like Otis and Tozawa are naturally going to help transition people from the main roster to give NXT a chance if they know a couple of the names that are down there. I feel like this should be a situation of if you don't use it, you lose it, because if you're not going to use Cameron Grimes, then you shouldn't have Cameron Grimes on the main roster. You might as well send him to NXT to revitalize his career a la Baron Corbin and actually get some TV time, because he was great on NXT. He's shown that he's a great in-ring performer, and on NXT he showed that he was a great character as well. And none of those things are being taken advantage of or being showcased on WWE TV. So why have him being held hostage on the main roster if you're just gonna pull him out for a 30-second squash match against Braun Breaker? Don't forget, this is the guy that squashed Baron Corbin in about 6 seconds, and then after that he was pretty much never seen again. So more or less right from the onset of him being called up to the main roster, his stories and his plans were absolutely thrown out the window within like 2 weeks of him debuting. So if you're not going to use him on the main roster, then we might as well give Shawn Michaels another serviceable, great in-ring performer to help develop the rest of NXT. Do I see him becoming the face of NXT or one of the pillars of NXT? I don't see that happening anytime soon, but at the very least they can get some value for him, because right now it's just looking like he's going to be a casualty in another set of releases. Plus, if Baron Corbin is down there, they can actually continue that program in that feud that they never touched once Baron Corbin was moved over to NXT. So there's something already available for Cameron Grimes to do, which is more than we can say than his time on his main roster where there's nothing for him to do. Michin Mia Yim is too damn good to not be utilized on television. And that's been the case over the last couple months. She had a great end to 2023 where she was being utilized and being utilized really well. She was having great TV matches, gave Io Sky one hell of a title match, and to me, she was looking like she was going to have a really promising 2024, but once the calendar year turned, they stopped utilizing Mia Yim more or less altogether. And right now, when you look at what she's doing on the main roster, she's kind of directionless because AJ Styles has gone off to go do his own lone wolf thing, and then you have the Good Brothers, Carl Anderson and Gallows, already on NXT. So what's there for her to do in terms of character on the main roster? There's nothing. Mia Yim is also one of those individuals that when she was on NXT, even then she didn't get a chance to shine in front of that takeover crowd. So we might as well give her a chance to do that had now in 2024. I could see her having banger matches with the next generation of NXT superstars like Lola Vice, like Roxanne Perez, like Lyra Valkyria, Carmen Petrovich. There are so many great names down there for her to go have banger matches with. And maybe she does reunite with the Good Brothers. I don't know. But again, more recognizable faces from the main roster to NXT is just overall going to help NXT without damaging the main roster because they're not using Mia Yim in the first place. So again, if you don't use it, you should lose it. I feel like Omos would be really fascinating on NXT. We've seen the formula of Omos play out on the main roster before with the Big Show, the Great Khali. The big men have always had a place in the WWE main roster, but we haven't had a guy like this in NXT before. The closest thing to a giant like this that we've had on NXT is Von Wagner, but Omos absolutely dwarfs Von Wagner. And Omos has been, as far as I know, healthy for quite a while, making appearances on house shows, appearing in the Royal Rumble, appearing in the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, but it seems like there's nothing for him to do on the main roster as far as I can tell. Unless maybe there's a plan to revitalize him on the main roster after the draft, I'm not sure. But if you remember, he was one of those people that was negotiated to be a free agent that could appear on all these shows, but then he just ended up disappearing. Actually, that kind of happened with most of the people that were free agents in the last draft. So somebody should draft Omos so that he can actually have a night that he actually is supposed to work in, and I think that that night should be Tuesdays on NXT. Plus, NXT right now has this crop of big, meaty dudes that are incredibly athletic that I think could have great matches with Omos. I'm thinking immediately of the Joe Gacy's of the world, Dijak, Josh Briggs, and of course, Oba freaking Femi. So I see a lot more output potential of Omos's talent on NXT than I do right now on the main roster. So let's go over to NXT with Omos. Homo sapiens, you're gonna need to tune in to Tuesday nights. Shayna Baszler needs to go to NXT for one reason. And one reason, this big main reason. I need you to become the next Baron Corbin, Shayna Baszler. I need you to go to NXT, revitalize your career, be this monster that you were at the start of the pandemic and in 2019, this woman that no one wanted to fuck with. I need you to get that aura back in NXT, just like how Baron Corbin was able to regain his aura on NXT, and now we want him on the main roster. That's what we need from Shayna Baszler. She needs to go down there, she needs to break arms, she needs to win the North American Women's title, win the NXT title, and she needs to have a solid 8-month run on NXT where when she's ready to come back to the main roster, she is scary again, because right now she's not. And that, in my opinion, is a crime. Shayna Baszler needs to be legitimately one of the scariest women on the roster. But I don't think that you can just, I don't know, snap your fingers and make that be the case. I believe that she needs to go actually prove it again on NXT, because I don't think that she's going to be getting that opportunity on the main roster. Think about how hype it was to get Shayna Baszler appear on GCW Bloodsport and go kick ass over there. I feel like that's the Shayna Baszler that we need on NXT, because I don't think that's the Shayna Baszler that we're ever going to get on the main roster again. Kind of similar to Baron Corbin here, I think Shinsuke Nakamura would be an awesome addition to NXT. Not only do I think that NXT could help revitalize Shinsuke Nakamura, don't get me wrong, Shinsuke Nakamura has already done a great job of revitalizing himself, but I think NXT could give him that extra jump as well. Don't forget that Shinsuke Nakamura, to many of us, is like one of the greatest NXT superstars of all time, one of the greatest to ever do it in the black and gold brand. But Shinsuke Nakamura has done a great job of revitalizing himself and changing his character and making himself feel far more important on the main roster, but he's clearly hit a ceiling. That ceiling being that he's going to lose every match and every feud that he's a part of against pretty much any babyface. So if you've already hit your ceiling with him on the main roster, and his spot is likely going to be taken by a new heel in the name of Chad Gable most likely, then you might as well take this revitalized Shinsuke Nakamura, bring him over to NXT, let him build up even more and become one of your faces and one of your monsters of NXT. And I look at some of the matches that are potentially available to somebody like Shinsuke Nakamura, and god damn, this chair is wet just thinking about it. I just think that he's reached max potential on the main roster, at the very least max potential that WWE top brass will allow him to get to. But man, under Shawn Michaels, I feel like this man could have some deviously good matches. And the last one, I need you to hear me out, because I don't think that this should be a full-blown move to NXT, but I think Sheamus should go have a Becky Lynch-like run over on NXT for a bit. The Becky Lynch type run run is where she was working both shows, but she won the NXT Women's Championship and was defending the NXT Women's Championship on Raw and on NXT and having full-blown stories and feuds on NXT and on Monday Night Raw. I think Sheamus can be that guy, a guy that's in the twilight of his career where, honestly, I think he would benefit from reaching extra milestones to add to his resume that he hasn't done so already, like Becky Lynch winning the Women's Championship on NXT. I think it'd be cool if Sheamus won the North American title over on NXT, or won, dare I say, the NXT Championship on NXT for a little while. And him losing the NXT Championship to the next up at bat, the next superstar on NXT, could help elevate that superstar without damaging in any capacity Sheamus, because we know that formula works because it worked with Becky Lynch. She won the title, helped elevate the title, helped elevate the division, and when she lost the title, the one that won it got catapulted up and Becky Lynch lost no credibility. So you have a formula that works, and I think you should follow it with Sheamus here. But I don't want to lose Sheamus on from regular television. I still want to see him do double duty across Raw and NXT. That's personally what I would like. Another option is maybe it is a full-blown move to NXT, kind of like Finn Balor did during the pandemic, where he felt like he was already reaching his peak on the main roster, went down to NXT, became NXT champion, revitalized himself, changed his character up to be a heel, and right back when he came back up to the main roster, he was again a star. I don't think that Sheamus needs that, because I don't think that Sheamus' star power has dwindled in any capacity, which is why I'm more likening him to Becky Lynch's run than Finn Balor's. But I think that there is tremendous value in somebody like Sheamus going to NXT, help mentoring the next generation, but also, putting his boot down their throat. Bro, Sheamus versus Oba Femi. Sheamus, Dijak, Sheamus, Josh Briggs. So many awesome combination of matches available to the Celtic Warrior Sheamus. All right, folks, those are my choices. Let me know what you feel I might have overreached on. Maybe one that you would move to NXT as of today. Let me know down in the comments, but that's it. I'm done. Get out of here.